Mr. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Batty,
Here.
Mr. Jessic, Mr. Gary Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Steve Johnson,
Here.
Mr. LaSalle,
Here.
Mr. McEnroe,
Here.
Mr. Mahoney.
Okay, approval of the minutes of June 16th, 2015. Does anybody have any corrections or additions? Okay, everyone in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda analysis. Do any of the members have anything on the agenda they want to move forward or add to? Okay, I guess we're good there. Citizen comments. Welcome back, everybody, to the Transportation Advisory Committee after our 2-month summer vacation. It's kind of nice to get back and get rolling again. Got a lot of business to take care of. The first person to come will be Michael Simon. I'd like to remind everybody, excuse me just a moment, remind everybody to either turn their cell phones off or put them on mute, and then the speakers have 3 minutes to speak.
I had several meetings back handed out kind of a thick document on my basically the Lynn Avenue. It was specifically for Lynn Avenue in general, for the corridor from Myers Road, Leland, Lynn. And I'll just kind of read some of the issues I had with the process. Was Bill Daniels in a meeting which referenced page 3, but it was April 16th, 07 meeting, presented a letter from the McLaughlin neighborhood in opposition to what I think people thought was a proposed increase in the speed limit on Myers, Leland, and Lynn. And so I'll deal specifically with Lynn. And at the time, people weren't aware that it was already a done deal. It had been done 4/16/07 is when that was finished. And he was concerned that residents of the McLaughlin neighborhood had worked hard to make it a livable neighborhood and pedestrian friendly and so forth, and that the speed was too fast for a residential neighborhood. And people were pretty confused about what went on. It led me to spending a lot of time trying to figure out what was going on. And the result was this document I put together. And I would kind of like to go over my understanding of the process. I have a letter from then State Senator Kurt Schrader. And it was, the process is the city sends a speed zone request to ODOT stating the speed that they desire, and then ODOT does a speed zone study, and mainly goes by the 85th percentile. There are other factors involved, roadside culture, accidents, pedestrians, and so forth. And they had a 35, their 85th percentile was, I think, 36 miles per hour, and they corrected it down to 35 for the accident factor. And that's predicated on a ODOT criteria that streets that are being used for arterial designations, you can't really have a 25 mile an hour designation. It has to be higher than that. And so then we came down to the understanding that most people had, Alice Norris had, when she answered a letter, was that ODOT was the decision maker, and all the city could do really was install warning signs, and that was it pretty much, that ODOT was the decision maker. And I think the elected people didn't really understand the process, that there was leeway. And then no one really questioned the designation of, well, Lynn Avenue in this case is a minor arterial, and because it doesn't really fit the transportation plan definition of a minor arterial, which would have sidewalks and bicycle paths and slower speeds than major arterials, which Moala would be the parallel major arterial. And Moala slows down to 30 miles an hour at Holmes, and about Gaffney Lane, I think they're 35. And the minor arterials, on their definition, are slower than major arterials. And for me, someone who's educated in biology, all my training goes into a definition is, you're describing something, you don't really deviate from it. If you deviate from it, it's not the animal or mushroom or process you're looking at. And the speed zone request form, which I don't, well, Thomas, you were going to read that? Did you get through and read this? Did you have a chance to read this? It's kind of.
I got through part of it. I didn't get through the whole thing.
Okay, it's kind of unusual. Like a research paper, you usually just put down footnotes and you let people go to the library to verify it. So I supplied the library with it, and that makes it kind of clumsy to read. But on the speed zone request form, it stated that some people wanted the speed increased and some wanted it lowered. And that comes from apparently 2 anonymous phone calls, which that's part of the process. Local citizens or business people can request a speed change. But we don't even know if these people, I say, was it Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin? It's anonymous. Nobody knows who these people were. So I think that process really needs to be more inclusive of residents who pay property taxes. If you go along all the residents on that street, it's quite a bit of money from Fifth Avenue all the way up to the end of Myers Road, and it would be quite a chunk of money. So those people should be recognized for that. They're not a business. It's not all concentrated in one little area, but all those people do, I think, deserve some input. And then their elected representatives don't understand the process. They just have no voice.
Well, I think I'd like to kind of cut to the chase here. We know that this was accomplished in, 2007?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a number of years ago. I'd like to know what you want us to do. Because I personally have read your report 3 times.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned that before. And it took me that many times to really get a good grasp of what you were trying to get across to us. And I fully understand that. But back then when all that happened, the neighborhood was not a process officially of a speed change. And they still are not officially, although John has agreed to notify the neighborhoods of any speed studies that will be made in the future, so that it's something extra that we've kind of accomplished here in this room. Is if something happens in your neighborhood association will be notified.
I'm not meaning to criticize Public Works. I think they have a lot of work to do. I really think that, my personal view is we probably ought to pay our mayor and people so they have 8 hours a day to apply it to the job.
Well, I've
take
doubled,
some of the
I've
heat
doubled
off.
our pay here.
Take,
Yeah, double nothing.
yeah, I'll double your pay.
Oh, thank you.
So, I think it's a problem of Public Works really being stretched out too far. They got plenty to do without being involved in public relations, I think, or, working all day and coming to meetings. Personally, that's my feeling. But I think the process was kind of skewed, and then the people that are involved in it, like stating that some people wanted the speed raised or lowered, that's just filling in the blanks. So someone's being kind of forced to be dishonest to fill in the blanks, and I don't think that's fair. And then Nancy Kraushaar, I thought was a nice lady who worked hard and was smart. And she's forced to do a timeline in response to my questions, trying to figure out what was going on, because I was just told ODOT works in strange ways, and I was kind of compelled to find out what was going on. It took me a lot of time. I would have brought this out sooner. I had a medical issue where it took me a year and a half to resolve a insurance problem that had I not resolved, I'd be dead. So that was where my time went. Otherwise, I would have been here before this, but I'm here now. But I think that things, I think that people need to be involved. If people live in a neighborhood, then if you're having people that are dealing with traffic dealing with it, then they rightfully so deal with the engineering aspects and the traffic. Whereas people that live there, they're the ones that are dealing with the noise and, being worried about crossing the street or having their kids out the street. And I think we'd get a more balanced and more productive process if everyone was involved and knew what was going on.
Well, I think we're taking a step in the right direction. We do have several other people that would like time to speak.
Okay,
also.
I'll be quiet. I'm kind of introverted and don't really like to talk in public anyway.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Your name, sir?
James King.
Okay, you were up next. So-
Perfect. Well, I would like to answer your question. Yes, Michael, if you don't mind. What would we like? I think we would. The people that live in the neighborhood that happen to hear the trucks whine up and Grenada clutches going up the hill. We would like it to be a neighborhood like it looks.
Mm-hmm.
It right now it acts like a highway. It's the 35 miles an hour coming down that hill, the corner right before my house, and people are going 40. I understand that in 2007 the speed limit was changed, but it doesn't work. I mean, I'm all for trying things, but if they don't work, you should probably go back to what you had before. I would like to see a slower speed. I would like to see some traffic calming devices added, crosswalks. I mean, it's a historic neighborhood with a highway through it. It doesn't make sense.
Have you gone to any of your neighborhood association meetings?
I have not.
Okay. Because I've addressed this at least to 2 of those meetings. And I've been going to neighborhood association meetings since last spring, and this is the information that I've received from those neighborhoods. So, we're on our way to trying to do what the neighbors want, but in many cases it will take probably additional speed studies, and it just takes time.
You guys already did a speed study right by my house, right in front of Michael's house.
Oh, okay.
And there you put that flashing sign that says, "Hey, you're going, 36 and a 25," and people slow down.
Yeah.
So it's not accurate. You want to know how fast people are really going? Hide that thing in the bush, where no one can see it.
Well, now, let me ask John or Martin, do those speed studies always have those flashing signs, or does ODOT just do them anonymously, like with those hoses across the streets? Or
we do both. We've got an active
program where we go every 3 years and we actually measure them with more of the tube counter type speed study where you don't see what your sign is. And we've done that recently. We did that within the last, I think 2014 was the last round of speed studies that we had. As far as I don't recall exactly, but I'm guessing Lynn Avenue was one of the streets, Fifth Avenue was one of the streets, Leland, we do them all over town. We do them citywide. And those don't tell you you're doing, what your speed is. The signage that we have that we've acquired over the years has become a lot more. Sedemir, you're at that end. Just that's where you're signing. Those are not necessarily intended for speed studies. They provide speed data that we have shared. It's not necessarily it's accurate, but you're right. It's influenced because the driver at that point in time knows what they're getting. But we also have other traffic data as well. And the stuff that the state relies on is more related to their own speed indicators that are beyond what we collect as a city every 3 years. So right now, if you go to our website, there's several years of history of speed data that anybody can access. We use it. You can access it. You can access it. Anybody can access that speed data. So it's just the signage has gotten nice, and now it's got all kinds of data. We can average that information. Martin's come up with lots of ways to share that information. So we do, because people are demanding that information. But you're right; it's influenced by the fact that there's
It might be interesting to look at.
We
what
can
the speed
turn the
study-
visual component off on the trailer in particular.
Oh,
So that was one of the features that we liked about that. If we just want it to collect data and not be an advisory,
yes.
we have that capability. We haven't done it yet because what the citizens are asking us to do is put it out there and advise the driver. The data collection is an ancillary component that we use.
Well, I, for one, I'm going to look up the study there on your street that was done most recently. And then if you would email me your concerns, specifically at what part of that street you want addressed, my email address is, I'm the chair of the Park Place Neighborhood Association, so you can look up on the website the neighborhoods and look up the Park Place neighborhood, and my email is on there.
For a low-tech way, if people are interested in checking a speed limit, is you convert miles per hour to feet per second and have a stopwatch and then have a segment that you measured off, and you can low-techly get very accurate measurements.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you. Patrick Sweeney.
No, I'm okay. They'll take it easy on me. So I got some notes on a phone. Excuse me if I'm looking at it. I'm not trying to be rude in any way. So I want to thank you guys for letting me come to speak and kind of piggyback on what has been said already and some new insights. I live at 801 5th Street, right on 5th, 5th and Jefferson, right next to the judge's old place. And I've been there since 2007 when the speed change came up into effect up on Lynn. I swear when I first was buying the house in historic Oregon City, there was barely a car passing by on that day. It was probably a Sunday. And then I swear I moved in. The next day there were trucks and everything, and it was thousands of cars rolling on by pretty fast. So I also want to thank Michael for his research. I got a chance to read his research that has spanned around that time. It was insightful because what it was sharing with me, or what I saw, was a triggering of a change in speed, which seemed to be more of, it looked like our city was yielding to ODOT, and ODOT's decision, which I've read is based off of, they go in, look at a speed, and they then say, well, we see people speeding past an 85th percentile or something to that effect. So then they justify increasing the rate, which seems preposterous to me when you're looking at a neighborhood or an area that then feeds right directly, like where I'm at, into a very busy family-oriented neighborhood. I could see where they might have that kind of sway within a highway, or an open highway where there's just nothing but cows. But when you come around a corner into a historic family-oriented neighborhood, the one I live in, I think it promotes a promotion of speed all the way through our 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I've noticed it. I've seen half a dozen, my wife and I and my child. I've seen half a dozen T-bone accidents with people trying to pull out in the fifth, no doubt because of speed. You look at national studies across the board, proof is in the research that at 45 miles per hour, or 40 miles per hour, you see an 80% in fatality, 85%. And then when you go 30 miles per hour, it cuts in half to 45. You guys know these stats. And then, surprisingly, it's only a 5% fatality rate when you're going 20 miles an hour. So one of my biggest issues as I'm fronting all this speed and traffic is safety, especially when I have a 5-year-old son. Other issues, I think that there are things that are promoting speed that I hope we could see and be a little bit more progressive on, like promotion of more crosswalks. I know there's all kinds of mixed reviews as to whether or not crosswalks help support slower speeds, but I think what we're talking about is changing the culture of pedestrian versus vehicle. And I think our city right now is very ODOT culture oriented, where we're promoting speed to get to our house versus that of using our green spaces, connecting neighborhoods and parks, coffee shops, storefronts, etc. And I think we need to change that view. I think the promotion of the Lynn Ave, Leland Road, Myers Road corridor plan is going to continue that kind of speed first mentality. I don't know or wonder if I'm going to see any reduction in speed in front of my house because of it. Pretty much I think that's covered it. Many of our cities in the Northwest have already pioneered these alternative or many different types of alternatives, such as reduced speeds in minor arterial roads, installation of these crosswalks connecting neighborhoods, parks, and schools, and maybe even perhaps more traffic calming combinations to help ensure safety, which can, I think, change for the better our city's culture of, this vehicular speed first above the needs of pedestrians. Shouldn't we start looking at these alternatives that curve these apparent dangerous conditions of speeding through my neighborhood? So thank you.
Thank you.
May I have a question?
Yeah,
Certainly.
And I'm not an expert, so I'm.
This is a simple one.
Yeah,
What's the speed limit on Jefferson and 5th in front of your house?
25 miles per hour.
Thank you.
Did I get that right?
Oh, you did.
So where I was going with this is I think that where it turns coming down the hill, I guess there are other factors and variables I probably should have pointed out. You're coming downhill from a 35, and I think that a couple of those things are promoting more of that speed limit. We have a very strapped police force, I understand, but I see very limited, catching of people violating that speed, enforcing speed limits on 5th in front of my house. I'm right there. Every day I come out and I'm looking at those cars fly by me clearly at 45 and beyond. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Francesca Anton.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. You've all seen me before. Luisa Ganyu and I've been working together during your vacation, and she's out of town right now up in Canada. So I'm going to hand Lisa some printings that we made for your perusal for staff and members of the committee. And before I go into what I want to talk about, I just want to thank Michael and the speakers so far. we're a first city in history, but I would love to see us become a first city in progressive thinking. One of the things I did is I did a pretty massive online search of what cities around the country are doing with traffic calming and handling urban growth and with regards to traffic issues. And I found two that were particularly good, and I'm going to give them to Lisa, and hopefully she'll make copies. One is from Palo Alto. There's a short clip from, this is short from Palo Alto. I talked to a person there, Paso Robles and Asheville, North Carolina. One of the things I discovered is that lots of cities, when you go into their area to go into further resources, name Portland as a progressive city. So I found Mr. Gabriel Graff and Scott Batson, who are traffic program managers for the city, and had a lovely conversation with them, and they sent me some things that might be helpful to you too if you haven't seen them. I've read through them. There's the whole issue of the collector streets. That was my main interest. What do you do with collector streets where most of the people who live on them are residents? Luis and I walked down both Center and High, 2 parallel collector streets, and counted the residences, people who live there and face the street, and counted the businesses and public facilities. And there are far more residences than businesses and public facilities. And by many cities' criteria for doing traffic calming devices on collector streets, we meet them because we're way over 75% residential on these 2 streets. So I called the Palo Alto person. He was amazing. We got onto Skype, and he said, "Oh, Oregon City, that's a famous town, and you have Willamette Falls," and he knew all. And we Skyped together, and we shared screens, and he pulled up Google Earth, and he looked at our town, and he looked at our maps, and he said, "Oh, you have a really problematic town." I said, "Yeah." So, I asked him about the collector streets, and he looked at Center, and he looked at High, and he goes, "Okay, well, you got stop signs there, and here, and this is here, and this is there." And he said, "Those streets are too wide, and they should be one way, and maybe with some speed bumps that the fire trucks and things can go down." He said that would pretty much quiet those streets right now. And I thought, I hadn't thought of that, but it made sense to Luis and I. So I have included that. I love these 2, Asheville and Paso Robles, because they really go into defining wonderful definitions, wonderful objections and goals. They've worked their plan. Paso Robles especially, they sent me a wonderful chart. Traffic calming decision-making process. It's terrific. It's highly respected by the country. I'd love for you to see it and think about it. We need a vision. We need to be proactive. And I think that's the only way we're going to really have citizens here feel like their taxes are going someplace to helping people who are already here have a good quality of life. So I have these for you. Is there anything else? Am I close to my 3 minutes? Also, Luis and I, we just started counting the semi-trucks. There are even semi-trucks that come down Washington, 2 or 3, 4 a month, because they're looking at a GPS and they're trying to cut around, and you should see them try and back up and turn around. It's really something. But there must be a way we can get these humongous trucks off these streets. I think that the businesses who have delivery trucks don't need a semi to deliver beer. They can have a smaller delivery truck come down the street. So we have asked the city to please address this issue. And thank you. I look forward to seeing you. And
Was that last piece of paper something you sent to Public Works, or?
No, this is all just for you.
You said you sent it to the city.
No. What to see?
I misunderstood you.
Yeah. No, I just would.
Well, if you're around for the rest of the meeting, you'll learn about some things that we are doing that are positive.
I would love to, and I'm sure that you are, and I'm hoping I can connect. I've got company from Canada, and I need to get back home, but otherwise, I hope to read everything.
We do a lot of research.
Yes, good. That's good.
I've read
I
all
would
those
too if
things
I was
that
in
you
your
just talked
seat.
about.
You have read all these
Yes,
things.
I have.
Really? You too, Henry?
They're about 20, 25 years worth of
Oh,
experience
that's right,
with
because
that
it's your
stuff.
business. I know. Well, I learned a lot. It's not my forte. My forte is hard science and the arts. So,
Well, we get a lot of things done. We get a lot of things done here in the Transportation Advisory Committee to help neighborhoods. So.
but you know, we've been asking for a long time, and
Well, we're on a track now,
okay.
but it won't happen
Francesca,
overnight.
I think it's important for you to know that I did receive a copy of the email with all the attachments that you'd been distributing around various email lists. So we've shared that with all the TAC, so they'd have those links and they'd get your messaging.
There's wonderful stuff out there.
Okay, are there any other citizens that want to speak about any subject? Yes. Did you fill out a form?
Paperwork, so you
That's the south end. Did you want to do that with discussion of 5A on the agenda? Right, south end Partlow, right.
Should be.
Elaine Krause? Yeah, that will come at a later time in the meeting. Not too far. Yeah, we're getting real close to it.
It's first
In
agenda
fact,
item.
I guess it is the next item, so, yeah. Your name is Elaine Krause, right?
Yes, I'm Elaine Krause, and I live on 11805 Hartwell Road. I don't know
You
if
need to
know-
get closer to the mic so it'll get picked up.
Hartwell Road is a connector road from South End Road to Central Point Road. And I'll tell you, those people will come up from probably Canby going to work, I don't know, or where, but they cut through there. And we have a new subdivision on the corner of Partlow and South End Road. And so there's a bend in the road now, so you can't see the corner where they come in. And, you know, if I go get the mail, I can go out up to the white line, look both ways, double check that way again to South End Road, and I can walk to the middle of the road, and by golly, there'll be cars coming like 45 miles an hour. I know, I just stand there with my mouth open, and I just freeze because they're just going so fast. And fortunately, I think maybe the gray hair, they have a little respect for that, and they stop usually, but scare me to death lots of times. And I have a friend that lives up in that new subdivision, and she has to walk across that road to her mailbox. And she said, I take my life in my hands every day when I go get my mail, because she doesn't even have quite as much time as I do. But I don't know. And I was listening to the suggestions these people have made, and I don't know what would do it. We have one of those flashing lights down further coming up from Central Point Road, but nothing up where they cut off from South End Road. And I don't know, but fortunately there aren't too many children right now at this time living in that part of the Partlow Road, because we'd have a lot of accidents, but most of them are getting as old as me, so that's pretty old. And I don't know what we can do. We crossed over some speed bumps when I went to a friend's memorial service on Saturday in Portland, and they weren't big, and I thought, well, I suppose that would do it, but I don't know. But something, maybe we could put a sign, strictly enforce by law enforcement or something. I don't know a speed, but it's 25 miles an hour. It used to be 40, but they've changed it for the last 20 years to 25. But that is far from, you know. And my son's here from Wyoming, and he backed out the other day from my driveway, and he said that he looked twice too, and he says, I barely got out there. He said, I just about damn near got hit, he said. And he scared him to death, you know. So I don't know, but that's going to be a big problem area. I'd like to
Anybody have any questions?
call it to your attention.
Isn't there a stop sign halfway on Bartlow?
No, there's a stop sign on either end.
On either end.
There isn't at that. Okay, I thought there was.
There's a speed limit sign it's electronic speed limit sign that we use from time to time.
And the speed
that comes and goes.
The
It's
speed
one of our
is
portable signs.
The
So
speed is
Three
25.
rotating signs
Yeah,
that
the
move
speed
to
is
13
25,
different
right.
locations.
speed is
35, I
posted
think.
as 25.
So if we went to 20, they still do 40. We got to slow the people down, but they can't.
Yeah.
Do you guys have a speed study on that, or any kind of
We do
indication
on
what the
we do on Partlow as well.
what are those speeds?
I don't know it off the top of my head. We'll look it up.
I think because we're probably considered more rural than, you know, like Lynn. Surely, but, and so they must think they can go 65.
It must be all us old people because we're used to driving 55 through there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, John, could you clarify exactly what's being requested here?
We're not even to the topic. She's just talking under speaker comments, but we will clarify. I think Tom's going to present first, and then we'll make sure. If he doesn't make it clear, we'll make sure it's clear.
Okay, Tom O'Brien.
Tom? So this topic was brought to us by the Scheidemans, Tom and Peggy Scheideman, correct?
Peggy, Margaret.
Margaret, okay. They had sent a petition from the residents out in that area requesting for some improvements on the crosswalk. They weren't able to be here this evening, and they had sent an email, which I thought had been included in the packet, and it had not been included in the packet, so it was omitted. Yeah, it's not in the hard copy that I have. And I had promised the Scheidemans that this would be part of the official record. So you'll be receiving an amended agenda with this as part of the official record by probably tomorrow. But I do want to just put that out there. If you'd like, I can read the email. It is a bit lengthy, but I'll let Tom finish his presentation first.
I think I can cover the majority of the things that are in the email, but in case I forget any, Martin can fill them in. I feel overly generous tonight. I am going to triple your pay.
You're my man, Tom.
I hope you'll be as generous with our neighborhood. This is the fourth time that someone from our neighborhood association has appeared before this committee in the past 4 years. In addition, Chair LaSalle has attended one of our meetings this year, gathering information from the neighborhood as to what our major concerns are on traffic throughout the city. And it was very well received. We really appreciated Bob showing up and taking the information that we were offering. This intersection had a traffic study done on it in 2012, about the time of our first complaint in late 2011. However, I know part of this is in your packet. It's a 4-page report that was done by DKS Associates. And in that report, as I read through it, there were several things that have changed, several things that were not correct, and one major thing was that whoever gave the instructions for how the report should be done has the study being done along the arterial South End Road, when in fact The problem is on Partlow Road. It says under study area in your document, you want to pull that document up, Martin, or whoever I'm working with here?
Lisa's working on it.
Oh, the other one, the report. In your packet, it was titled, I believe, the South End Partlow Report. There it is. On the opening page of that, if you scroll down to where it says study area, and maybe enlarge it so they can read it, it says the South End Road, Lafayette Avenue, Partlow intersection is located in the South End neighborhood in Oregon City. Well, that's half true. The neighborhoods overlap on Partlow. The south end of Partlow is in the Hazel Grove Westling Farms neighborhood. So we have a lot of vested interest. We probably have more interest in it since it is the southern extremity of the South End neighborhood. The majority of their residents do not use Partlow. It is all of the new development that has taken place south of Partlow Avenue, for the most part, that is creating the problems which exist. Further on, it states, and this was something that John Lewis was very helpful in getting changed, the speed limit on South End was previously 40 mile an hour, all the way into basically Partlow. I had requested of John several years ago that it would make more sense to lower the speed limit to 35 at the city limits, going through, all the way through the school zone and on into Warner Parrott. And he was able to accomplish that, and I thank John for that. On the next page, in the volumes that are listed, the last sentence or so above the chart, the times that are really the heaviest in terms of pedestrian traffic are in the afternoon when the people in the neighborhood are out walking on Partlow, and as people are going to retrieve their students and so forth. Now, I have to say we do not have a lot of students walking on that area. The primary reason being that there aren't sufficient sidewalks to enable them to walk to McLaughlin Elementary. At the time this report was made, there were 3 schools servicing the elementary students. There was King School in the South End neighborhood. There was Mount Pleasant, and there was McLaughlin. We have closed, the district has closed both King and Mount Pleasant. So now McLaughlin students are coming from the Kanema neighborhood, the Tower Vista neighborhood, the South End neighborhood, and the Hazel Grove Westling Farms neighborhood. The majority of that is being students brought by their parents. So the volume of traffic that is using that area to bring students to and from school has increased dramatically since this report has come out. In addition, with the current level of building that's taking place in that area, not even including anything that's in the Tower Vista neighborhood, there have already been constructed or are in process of being constructed 314 additional single-family homes since this report was put together. So the validity of what you're seeing in this report needs to be adjusted in your thinking a little bit. Keep in mind there's no public transportation, which means that in general there are 2 vehicles per household, and if they're doing each vehicle 2 trips per day, you now have about 1,200 more trips per day through that busy area. The majority of the traffic that's coming off of South End, or excuse me, off of Central Point, is coming west on Partlow Avenue, Partlow Road. The reason is they want to avoid the intersection that has been problematic and is already over capacity at Central Point and Warner Parrott, where the roundabout is being considered. In order to avoid not being able to turn left there and go down Warner Parrott to reach South End Road Hill, because most of them, a large percentage, are heading toward Portland, they are cutting across Partlow to get to South End Road to go down the hill. So what we have is a heavy influx of westbound traffic on Partlow. Now we can go to that other one, if you would, Lisa. In preparation for this, I met with the Scheidemans last week to find out what they wanted me to stay in their behalf. And as I was there, before I went and called on them, I took a few minutes. It was no more than 4 or 5 minutes. And I stood at the intersection of Partlow and South End. Your transportation system plan really addresses safety in its goal too. The 3 that I have marked here with red arrows are indicative of things that I think precisely need to be thought about for the Partlow intersection. I'm not concerned so much with South End. People have always speeded on South End. They will continue to do so. But we need to do something to protect. The other woman who was speaking said that there aren't a lot of children there now. There are children that wait for school buses there. There are some children. We have younger neighbors moving in to homes in the area who will have children below school age at this point. And we also have a number of older people who have grandchildren who visit them regularly. So we do have children. They may not be as obvious as they would be in other neighborhoods. If you can scroll down a little bit, Lisa. I mentioned that
working it, by the way, so it's okay.
It's me working it, so I'm not offended, though.
Give credit where credit's due, my goodness.
I don't disagree.
This is a Google map showing what the intersection had looked like prior to the city changing it. It was a single lane in each direction. You had excellent sight lines both to the north and to the south on South End Road. And you did not have a wide swing turn radius. People actually had to slow down if they were turning from South End Road in either direction onto eastbound Partlow. So we have created the problem ourselves by putting in the S-curve, building more homes along it, and then if you go to the next photo, when they get to the intersection, this is what the layout looks like. The red arrow indicates where the stop sign placement is and where the stop should occur. However, the stop is not occurring there. In the 3 or 4 minutes that I stood there, I first stood here so I could get a perspective of where the driver, if he stops, he or she stops, where they're supposed to, what is their sight line to northbound South End traffic. Next picture, please, Martin. This is where I got down even to the level that they would be sitting in their car to take this photo. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but you'll see the picket fence in front of this house. This house was not there previous to putting this roadway in. And you'll see another 6-foot fence behind it, back even with the house line, the setback line. You cannot see anything coming at you at 40 mile an hour. Granted, it's a 35 mile an hour zone, but we know what happens. Next picture, please. This is where one of the people, I counted 11 vehicles while I was standing there. This is where one of them stopped. I aligned myself with where you could potentially see enough of the traffic coming north on South End that you would not encounter an accident. Next picture. Please.
Can I interrupt you just for a
Please do.
minute? Looking at that same picture, Martin, is there any kind of an ordinance that would require homeowners to cut the shrubbery back to improve the sight distance in a situation like that?
Ordinance for sight distance. We have design standards for sight distance. In that particular case, I think their property line is where the sidewalk is in the developed piece. I could be wrong about that, but
I believe you're right.
So I think the property line pops out. In order for us to do that, we'd have to have some kind of land use action on that property before we could require that. We could work with the property owner, though. Typically, property owners in Oregon City are aware and willing to make those kind of adjustments. So
it looks like that little bush, that first little bush, if it was...
Yeah.
It's not just the bush fence, everything.
Yeah. And, the
ones in the center strip there.
Yeah, those are street trees. And, those can also be, the city could limb them up if we needed to, or ask the property owner to deal with that. So
it's even the shrubbery at the end of the city sidewalk on South End Road. That's on private property because it hasn't been widened and dedicated yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure all of those properties along there are even in the city.
I'm not either, to be honest.
I think they're in the city.
Aren't they all the way up to the school?
Next picture, please.
Yeah,
So I took photos of the ones I could catch, but here you can see the driver is looking to the left, trying to ascertain whether or not someone's coming. This is where he stopped. This is where the majority, 10 out of the 11, well, I shouldn't say 10, 7 out of the 11 stopped at this general location. So we can go through the next couple of ones pretty quickly, Martin. See, he's hanging in this crosswalk. He had to get out far enough to see. There's another one beyond the crosswalk. It's a shorter vehicle. There's another one. This is just real world, folks. There's another one. Now, there was one instance, and I believe this is it. Yes, this is it. The second vehicle stopped before going past the crosswalk. And I'm not certain what caused her to do that. She kind of looked at me like, are you wanting to cross the crosswalk? Or was it that she didn't want to plow into the rear end of the pickup in front of her? I'm not sure. But this was the other scenario. Unfortunately, the other 3 vehicles that aren't accounted for, they did not stop whatsoever. Before the crosswalk, after the crosswalk, they just went on through with no stopping, no intent to do anything but slow down to about 5 miles an hour or 7 miles an hour. So that's out of 11. You had 3 that just totally ran the whole intersection. You had 7 that stopped where they're always going to stop. I don't think you're going to change the mentality of the motorist. I don't care what you do. You cannot have a parole officer out there, even as good as some of them are, 24 hours a day, citing people for not stopping. Now, Martin and I had a little conversation this afternoon. A couple of things that Tom and Margaret wanted me to bring up was, in addition to the additional traffic and building that's going on out in that area, that road, Partlow, is part of an incident route system. So when 99 is shut down because of a rock slide or other issue, all of the traffic from 99 will be diverted onto Partlow. That's a lot of traffic, folks.
Well, I
Tom,
guess,
could we
Tom,
get
it could be South End or Partlow, right?
Well, the signs at the corner at Lafayette have a left arrow pointing to Partlow for the incident response.
But that sign is convertible to go either way. So it can be a through arrow, depending on who the incident responder is. So when the accident, we've got an incident action plan for that. When the accident on 99E occurs between South End and South 2nd, they divert using South End Road. When it's between South End Road and 99E and Caris, I think it's Caris Road interchange on 99E, that's when they divert them up through and on to Partlow. So that's the...
May I offer a suggestion then? Do not have the arrow, when it's in dumb mode, pointing in either direction.
Yeah, it sounds like the
Because
sign
the
needs to be-
people who are going through that area on any kind of a regular basis are conditioned to think that in the event of an incident, they have to turn left there.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like it hasn't been changed and should be.
Tom, could we have a summary?
Yeah. Martin and I talked this afternoon about a couple of issues. One was the report suggests putting, the 2012 report suggests putting a crosswalk midpoint near the firehouse and another one down at Rose Road. And Rose is one of the major development areas. I think that's fine, but with the lack of sidewalks on South End, I don't really think it's going to improve any situation whatsoever. The people who use or have need to cross South End are jaywalking wherever it's convenient for them to jaywalk due to a lack of continuing sidewalks. So I think it's a waste of money to do that. Further, Martin suggested that the biggest problem is we do not have the money to correct the problem there. And I understand that we don't have money for anything in this city. That's why we keep implementing more fees. It's also one of the reasons that I'm promoting the fact that the downtown district should be closed, because for 33 years we've been diverting tax dollars away from the city's general fund, and it is now in the neighborhood of $1 million a year that we are putting into urban renewal district downtown instead of spending on the things we actually need in the city. I'll let Martin go on with some of the suggestions he made this afternoon to me over the telephone. I really doubt that they're going to help, but we're so frustrated, we want to try anything. We want some way to shut down the chance that someone is going to get killed at that intersection. You got a 90-year-old woman that was referred to earlier who has mobility issues. And she has to cross Partlow to get to her mailbox every day. Those are the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So, point of clarification, I did have a long conversation with Tom today, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I do want to mention, it's not that we don't have the money, it's the solution that you were advocating is not something that we can do within our operational budget. It would basically compromise a capital improvement project. And that's something that has to be budgeted and allocated for. It goes through an entire process. So I just want to make that clear. It's not something that I can just arbitrarily go and redesign an intersection using operations funds. Okay?
The suggestion I made, and was in the presentation, was they close the crosswalk there because it is a hazard, and move the crosswalk further east on Partlow. But that would require capital improvements.
The ADA ramps there would have to be completely reconfigured.
Toward South End? Would east be toward South End Road?
Toward Central Point.
Or Central Point? Oh, okay.
Into the S-curve area.
What Tom was advocating, and we don't have a current map in here, I'm just trying to use your
Either of those maps should work.
So if you can follow my cursor, which you guys can't see very well, it's basically some sort of mid-block cross near the cul-de-sac. Mid-block crossings are not ideal. They have their own issues associated with them. An alternative that I had talked to Tom about, which is something that we could implement, and it is something that I can cover within the operational budget, is some sort of raised signage or delineator at the crosswalks. This is an example here. We actually utilize on Myers Road, if you guys recall, we had the residents come and talk to us about a possible crosswalk at Myers Road. We did the advisory signage coming up to the crosswalk saying crosswalk ahead, and then we used what's referred to as R1-6A, which unfortunately I wasn't able to find a Google picture for you. but it's the 8-inch by 24-inch rectangular that's pole mounted that basically points to the intersection and tells people stop at crosswalk. So that's something that if we feel it would be an improvement, which I think it would help. We've had really good response with those from residents. That'll kind of advise the driver, stop here at the crosswalk. The action at that intersection is supposed to be you stop at the crosswalk. That is where the stop sign is posted. You check both ways to make sure you don't have pedestrians, and then you slowly progress forward to continue to try and make a left or right-hand turn. So this additional signage may help with that.
What about having crossbars? The delineate the crosswalk with the white.
Oh, with the parallel lines
Yeah.
rather than the continental keys?
Yeah.
I don't know so much if that would help. Our standard that we use, and the benefit of a standard is everybody recognizes that throughout the entire city, is we use the continental keys. They also tend to wear a little bit better, so they don't fade quite as quickly with the thermoplastic. There are a couple other improvements which are pricey, and I don't have in my budget, but it's something that we could allocate for a couple budget cycles ahead. One is there prior to the stop sign, about 100 feet prior to that, just before the cul-de-sac, is a stop sign ahead. It's a 36 by 36 diamond that says stop sign ahead. We could replace that with something a little bit more visible. There are some products out there that have LEDs that are solar powered, and they flash. They're activated when a car comes through there, and it advises the driver there is a stop sign that you are approaching, so it could get a little bit more visibility. Those are not an inexpensive option, and I can tell you for this budget cycle, I don't have funds for that, but it's something that we can either try and rob Peter to pay Paul, or I can budget for it at a subsequent cycle.
What is the cost of that, Mark?
$3,400. So a second option, I just got a quote from the vendor today for you, as soon as we got off the phone.
That's not installed.
No, that's the product. So then staff would have to install it and all of that. So the McLaughlin neighborhood came to us about 2 years ago, if you guys recall, and wanted additional radar signs deployed within the McLaughlin neighborhood. And they were adamant about trying to get these, and we explained to them the same situation here. It's I have to try and either work it in operations or budget for it in the next cycle. They brought money to the table, which I know nobody wants to hear that, but they were able to gather about half the cost of a new radar speed sign. I was able to cobble together the other half from, again, robbing Peter, and we were able to fund that project because there was a match, almost like a citizen match from the community, because they really thought that was advantageous for them. If it's something that your neighborhood feels, you want to try and do, it helps me with trying to make the argument that I've got to spend dollars that I hadn't budgeted for.
I appreciate that offer, Martin. Our neighborhood does not have any businesses in it.
Okay.
Our neighborhood also does not have a fundraiser at the concerts selling snow cones to raise funds for the neighborhood.
Okay. I'm just putting out all
we
the
get a
options that I
budget,
have.
which we've had to cut back on the number of meetings, actually, because the budget has been reduced each year, that we couldn't even send out sufficient mailings to tell people that we were having a meeting. So that's how strapped we are for cash.
Okay.
I do offer a suggestion, though, and that is that the trailer that occasionally is rotated onto Partlow, currently it's at the far end near Central Point.
Okay.
And that does not appear to be the spot where, yes, there is speeding there because they got a long straightaway. But if we can slow them down coming into that S curve by placing that trailer closer to the south end portion of Partlow, I believe it could be beneficial.
So let me put in a plug for a very popular program that the police department and us have put together. It is the Speed Radar Trailer Program. We can bring some further information to you guys. We've talked about it before. I and Lisa and a couple members over at the PD, we take requests from citizens. We have a pretty lengthy spreadsheet, and we put people onto that spreadsheet, and we rotate our trailers through all the locations wherever we get requests. There's a couple caveats. We have to meet certain safety requirements for where you're requesting the trailer and where we can actually deploy it. But typically we can get in within a few hundred feet of where the citizens are requesting it. From this meeting, I'll put your request onto the trailer list and see when I can get that out to you. It's first come, first serve, and we don't like to hopscotch around because I don't want anybody feeling that one issue is more important than another. But I'll let you know tomorrow as an estimated time where I can get that out for you.
I appreciate you doing that because 2 times previously I've requested those trailers in different locations in the city, and neither time was the request responded to.
So,
It's a new, but by the way, Tom, we've got a couple of trailers. Police department has one that they've had for several years. We just got a new one in Public Works.
That's the one that I've requested in the past without any success.
So we've only had it for about 4.5, 5 months. So, like I said, it's a new program. Lisa and I manage it for the Public Works side, but we work in tandem with Officer, I'm going to screw it up, Hudabo? Okay. So he's our counterpart over there. We fill this spreadsheet, and whoever trailer can get to it first, just for expediency, that's which one gets put out there. If you specifically want our trailer, if you're looking for data that we can try and get from it, we'll try and see what we can do to kind of coordinate with Brian. But I can have it out there, as soon as I look through the schedule and see. Typically, it's a 30-day deployment. I'll let you know when we can get it for you.
I appreciate that very much. I think that...
Yeah. And then what we can also do is talk with our IT people and see if we can publish that list on our website so people can see where the requests are coming and where they're standing. So it's something I have to talk to IT, but I think it's something we can do.
Quick question, Martin. Did I understand that you're going to do these other steps as well that you talked about?
That's something I'm putting as a option to the group here. If you feel this is something that is warranted, and Tom, if you're supportive of this, I can cover this in operations as far as the delineators for the crosswalk.
I'm supportive of anything that is activity to make an effort to address this problem that is getting worse by the day.
See, when we have explicit requests like that, it makes it a lot easier. So I'll hand it over to the chairman and see if it's something that the committee wants to.
Does anybody have any comments or opposition to that?
So could you clarify this again? You want to move the crosswalk from the intersection of South End and Partlow?
No. The request, or what I had proposed, is that at the existing intersection, we will deploy the raised crosswalk markers, which are specifically, it's MUTC catalog number R1-6A. I'll pass this around so you guys can see it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get an image. We'll have those deployed, one on each approach, so that drivers know stop at the crosswalk for pedestrians.
A couple other things. So, Martin, the question I think, Senator, you asked was the speed on Partlow Road. Martin pulled that up. There's an average speed of 27 miles per hour at Partlow and South End. And Partlow and Central Point End, it's more like 26. So we've got 2 studies that were done. These weren't trailer-mounted studies. These were speed. These were speed studies that were done using tube counters. And then we also noted that the 85th percentile, which is slightly different than the average, is 30 miles per hour on the South End and 29 miles per hour on the Central Point End.
How far from the intersections were those tubes placed?
Yeah, don't have that with this information, but they're closer to the intersections than they are towards the center of the road.
It should be near the stop signs, and they're still doing. You said 25.
No, they're not. They're not. I wouldn't expect these counters to be in a place where they'd be influenced by the stop sign ahead. They'd be more associated with the actual representation of the speed on Partlow Road.
But you don't know if it was before the S curve or.
I suspect both of those were not in the S curve. So that's one piece of information. The other thing is, when we got the information from the neighborhood, I think that came by way of a planner. I think Kelly, new last name, Reed, attended your neighborhood meeting, right? And that's where
that's not correct.
Okay.
Laura Turway is the neighborhood representative from the planning department. She brought back with her, I should say, we meet 4 times a year, and this issue of this intersection has been part of our meetings every meeting for the last 4 years. You can go back to our minutes. It's something that our officer, Matt Lysick, our officer liaison, is well aware of and fully supported when we talked to Laura Turway this last meeting. She brought back the petition that is in your packet, and she sent it by email, sent an email to John following up sending the petition itself through interoffice mail, asking that he respond to the three of us, the two officers and the Scheidemans.
So Laura, not Kelly, brought the piece that's in your packet. What wasn't clear to us was exactly whether that we were talking Partlow or South End. So in conversations with Martin about maybe what the neighborhood wanted, we went ahead and did we hired Quality Counts, who does all of our speed studies, to do a pedestrian count. And they completed that pedestrian count on, let's see if I can find the date here, on September 9th. They did the pedestrian count in the morning between 6:30 and 8:25 a.m. And then they also did another count between 1:30 and about 6 p.m. We were trying to get a better assessment of pedestrian activity. So there's the counts that Martin's brought up. The afternoon has obviously got more counts. I think there's 13 pedestrians during that time frame of 5 hours, close to 5 hours, 4.5 hours. So that gives you a sense of the number of pedestrians that we typically see there. This intersection's in my neighborhood. I use it regularly, both in a vehicle and via walking as well. I agree with Tom on the geometric configuration of the intersection. I think that the radiuses on Partlow Road are too large. The larger you make the radius, the further apart your pedestrian crossing is, and your pedestrian crossing has to essentially kind of move around the corner, if you will, so it moves away. That's why the stop bars, if those were squared up more, you would tend to see more like you see in the McLaughlin neighborhood, where you got more standardized blocks with short radiuses, so that the pedestrian ramps can be very close to the point of the intersection or point of the corner. And this one's got large radiuses. I'm not quite sure why it was designed the way it was, but I agree. While this intersection in our transportation system plan is called for as a roundabout, I don't know how that's going to be a tough pull, I think, given the existing corners there, but at some point in time in the future, I suspect it'll have some kind of intersection control, and either we'll live with the curb ramps the way they are, or we'll have to adjust them. But that is more along the lines of a capital project, and as some of you know, our capital funding for this is limited, right? We've got a variety of other projects that use either gas tax funding for capital. Many of our project needs aren't funded through gas taxes. There's system development charges that sometimes apply if there's capacity added to the intersection. And if it's a pavement maintenance need, we often use the pavement maintenance utility fee to help cover those costs. It would be nice. I would say this about this project. I agree, more pedestrian activity would be nice to see in that particular area, and it might be improved if it were safer. I wonder if the neighborhood, which maybe consists of a couple neighborhoods, would be interested in more of a project. And we haven't done much of this, Tom, so I don't know if it's an idea that we might float out there, is a local improvement district whereby we look at sidewalk connectivity along Partlow. There's a lot of missing gaps along Partlow Road, and with that, we could look at some of these things that I think what others have talked about tonight, referred to as kind of like a road diet, where you narrow those lanes. You might, instead of having on-street parking, you include curb extensions. You do some of those kind of features from one end of the boulevard to the next, really, and take that on as a larger scale project that would be funded through a local improvement district. That doesn't necessarily mean that the neighbors fronting that are the only ones that paying for it. It could be others. The boundary of that district could be expanded to meet, some other kind of area that made sense as benefiting that. Probably wouldn't be city-wide, but it could be larger than just those property owners fronting that. And the city could help participate, find the funds that would also be a contributor to that project as well. I'd love to see, because I use Partlow all the time, sidewalk connectivity fixed. There's grade problems. There's places where there's curbs but no pavement, so there's a gravel area between the edge of the road and the pavement. There's drainage issues along there. It'd be nice to have a boulevard project that would improve that neighborhood greatly, and at the same time designed in a way so that it incorporates some of these features that we've heard about tonight, which includes what I think of as traffic calming devices.
John?
Yeah.
Would this fit into a school connectivity type project like you've been doing on one of the other schools, where you get McLaughlin as the hub and improve the sidewalks in the area and kind of tack this into the project like that?
I think because it's a grade school, it's a little far from there, but you're on the right track. Pedestrian activity, whether it be school children or just neighborhood children. We've been looking at South End unfortunately has deep ditches along the shoulder of South End Road, so.
It's a drainage and sidewalk
in order
project.
to put sidewalks in those areas, we know we're going to have to build storm drainage systems to collect that. But I agree, trying to fill gaps near grade schools is probably the priority. But Partlow Road, it's just there is, I think, a lot of neighborhood walking that happens there, and it'd be enhanced if we could get some sidewalk connectivity. Fortunately, there's right-of-way acquisition. I mean, Partlow is an old county road, so trying to get bike lanes in there, trying to get the right of way to do that. It'd be really good if we had some neighborhood buy-in, and if it takes this kind of a problem to get the folks that are along those corridors to become part of the solution, I'd sure like to get there. And if that if it would make sense, and Tom, you want to sponsor some kind of conversation like that, we would bring that to you. And I guess there's South End on one side of Partlow and your neighborhood on the other. Is that right?
I'm right near the school there on Hazel Grove.
No, I mean
the neighborhood,
the neighborhood association. Yeah.
Hazel Grove Westing Farms is on the south side of Partlow. South End is on the north side of Partlow.
As we see funding dry up for transportation, I think the community is going to have to embrace the idea of more local improvement districts to help fund projects that are, concrete and asphalt, and you're building a facility that preferably helps your bicyclists and your pedestrians, moves traffic. But we're finding, that especially in these neighborhoods like this, folks, like we've heard tonight, aren't necessarily as interested in moving traffic as much as they are as calming traffic. So we're advocates for that. We do have standards. You see a lot of our newer neighborhoods that include that. It's these older facilities that have just developed what they have developed over the years that become problematic for us. So, it is tough to get a critical mass of folks to go along with the local improvement district. But the more we start talking about it, the more we float that idea out there, the more likely we're going to see those kind of projects develop. And the same is true for a lot of what we've heard with Lynn Avenue, 5th Street. If we had what we're doing right now is, we're trying to build ADA ramps, but that's about we're using PMUF dollars to do that. That's not exactly how that was intended, but it's required by ADA regulations to do that. So, it'd be nice to have more curb extensions, those kind of things that narrow the gap for pedestrians, but still leave bike through ways. In McLaughlin neighborhood, we see drainage problems associated with curb extensions. They don't necessarily just lend themselves to just drawing a nice new line for the curb. You got to think beyond that. Usually carry it up or down the street several several feet.
On Partlow, does the city's GIS have enough information to be able to highlight those properties that would need to have right-of-way acquisition and those properties that don't have sidewalk frontage and that, to get a feel for exactly.
Showing the sidewalk issues all
Right,
through.
right.
Yeah, this shows sidewalks. I mean, we could at least close enough show where if we needed additional right-of-way for bike lanes or those kind of things, then yeah, we'd have that. We could figure that out.
I was just thinking it would be nice to at least have that information and be able to see if there's a way to put something together.
Yeah.
Well, all the neighborhoods are trying to figure out ways to get more people to come to their meetings. I think you've hit on a real strong subject there. It's the local improvement district.
Yeah.
That might get a few people coming to a few neighborhood meetings.
Well, I think folks assume that their tax dollars go towards street improvements, and they don't. Not property taxes, gas taxes. Most of that's consumed by day-to-day operations of the pavement programs that we have beyond PMUF, signage, street sweeping, all the things that happen. And so we've really kind of dwindled down to gas taxes not necessarily providing funding for road projects.
When I was here, the gas tax just barely funded the street crew and didn't do much beyond that.
Yeah.
Our neighborhood association is more concerned with what's happening with the system development charges that we have, for the most part, 90% of our residents have paid. Where do those go relative to issues like this? We're continuing to have very large, strong growth in our neighborhood, and it's not going to stop. The South End Concept Plan tells us they're going to double the number of homes in our neighborhood. So where are those system development charges currently that are being paid for roads? How are they being used?
Well, Tom,
stick around for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah. I think the other piece that I would suggest is there is some misconception. Obviously, most people aren't tracking where those projects are at, but we do have a plan for a what we're calling a collaborative forum on system development charges on September 24th. Mm-hmm. And as I heard this today, there was really only it's become a hot topic, but there's only 28 people signed up for that collaborative forum, which surprised us. We're thinking somewhere.
You show up, can't you?
No, you need to sign up. That's the preference because we're going to provide food and seating, and we want to make sure we're set up so that
I'm one of 28.
Food. So the information's online. It's been sent out to all the neighborhoods. You should have got it as well, Tom. So your neighborhood received that, and I think every neighborhood received that.
Neighborhood is inactive.
It's inactive? Well, then we sent it to all the active neighborhoods. I'm not sure. It's on our website. It's on the website as well. Mm-hmm. So you can go on there, call in, or register online. It's tailored fairly much on the business community because they're the ones who've raised the most concern about the cost of SDCs for their for development. But it's an informative forum that I think if you're interested in SDCs where they've been spent, that's a small portion of the forum. But we did ask Wyatt Parno to present some information. It's a 3-hour forum, so I think he's got about 15 or 20 minutes to talk about SDCs and kind of how they've been managed and spent.
The transportation plan we just finished had a section that showed what kinds of funding was going for which projects, which would delineate some of the projects that the SDCs were going for, so we could get that and take a look at that.
Right.
I mean, it's probably, I don't know whether the funding is behind or ahead of that. It's probably behind schedule, but at least it'll show how it was mapped out.
Yeah, that's true. So, transportation system plan, I know Tom's looked at it before. In fact, he referred to it right now. So, they've got, sometimes it's hard to find the details behind that, but we've definitely got lists of likely to be funded projects and unlikely to be funded projects. So I'm not sure how much more time we're going to spend on this one. We're pretty late into this, but I just wanted to let you know that, I think local improvement districts are going to become more popular as folks demand more and more services. Increases of taxes aren't popular, so I don't know if we'll see more of that. But
do you need a motion? Do you need a motion regarding the signing request, or is that just something staff can do?
I can take care of that. I just wanted to make sure that you guys were all comfortable with it.
Anybody against that signage? I guess you got it.
We'll get it taken care of. I just got to order them. They're not something we carry in stock.
Thank you very much.
One correction on my part. I did make a mistake. Lisa corrected me. The email is part of the packet. It printed at the back end for some reason, but it is part of your agenda. It just wasn't in the sequence when I was going through it. So please tell Mr. and Mrs. Scheidemann that I did keep my promise.
And please pass on to your neighborhood, even though it isn't active anymore, that you're finally getting some action from TAC, maybe.
I'll wait.
Until you see the signage. Okay, Tom. Thank you.
I hope you enjoy your increase in pay.
Thanks. Yeah. My wife would be thrilled. I can see the shopping trip now. Okay, Myers Road Extension Corridor Plan. Martin.
Oh, yeah.
One thing, we have Officer Rice with us today from the Oregon City Police Department. He had come specifically to talk about the enforcements on Center Street. We felt that was, you guys had wanted some more information on that. He's been very, very generous to be here, and I'd hate to have made the request that he attend and not give him some time to speak towards his enforcement actions. So if you don't mind, could we insert him in now at this point?
Certainly.
So we can kind of lose?
Yes.
We didn't ask him to be here because we were scared of the crowd. It was really just, he's specifically for traffic enforcement. He's been doing a great job from everything that James Band tells us, and I want to give him a chance to talk to you guys.
Come up to the...
I don't fit very well in these chairs with all my extra stuff on here. Yeah, my name's Mitch Rice. I was a state trooper for 25 years, and I retired and was getting bored, so now I'm working 2 days a week for the city of Oregon City. And my exclusive domain is traffic enforcement, although there's always going to be a little something on the side. But so I'm doing the very limited scope thing that the police department does, and that's two things: detect and apprehend. That's all I do. It's the perfect male activity. Hunt, 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 chase, 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 kill. Hunt, 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 chase, 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 kill. So I do that all day long, and I write lots of tickets and lots of warnings, and that's the very limited part of the education process for the public. I do know that there are some impacts that I have scientifically determined that I have made on some certain equipment things. That I used to write a lot of citations for certain defective equipment things, and now it's hard for me to find those. So people have either repaired their cars, modified them to be in compliance, or drive around the city limits, one or the other. I have talked to, part of my duties are to talk to people when the police department gets complaints or comments from the various neighborhoods. I do make an effort to go and talk to them face to face, and or leave a note or something. And a big part of my job is flying the flag, basically being in the neighborhoods, not just on the busy streets. So I don't know if I can answer some questions or.
Have you been asked by any neighborhood associations to attend their general meetings?
No, I have not been. A couple of reasons for that. One is I think there's an officer assigned to each one, and I work day shift during the week because that's when the most traffic is here in the city. When the college is in session, schools in session, businesses are operating, and there's a lot more traffic. So that's where the greater need is for a single person, myself, that works part-time. So I haven't been to any neighborhood meetings.
Sure. A quick questions. You have prioritize where you might be doing your patrolling? And then secondly, what's the typical number of citations issued in a day?
Oh, I like to get about 20 a day. That's sort of a personal goal, because it's pretty easy for me to do. I suppose weather and a few other things will compromise that. But and I do go. I have a sheet that I keep track of where I go during the day, and sometimes if I just pass through an area like on Center Street, I'll make a mark. Otherwise, if I spend time there, I keep track of the time in 15-minute blocks. Basically, I make it simple for me to complete the form, and also it's easier for data collection.
With regard to Center Street, are you finding people tending to be more close to the speed limit, or are they going too fast there?
There's not too much. I haven't. I've written very few citations for speeding on Center Street specifically, but I don't do that solely. I mean,
right.
I'll write citations for expired registration or anything, just to raise the awareness of of our presence and so on. It all has sort of a peripheral, or rather it has an effect beyond what I'm specifically doing. If the public driving by sees the police officer having a motorist stopped, then they don't know why, but it has an effect of the omnipresence of the law and all that.
So. I had read in the paper on August 31st, the Oregon City Police Department was going to, for 3 hours, sort of emphasize inattentive drivers talking on cell phones.
Distracted driving, yeah.
Can you tell me how that came out? Did you cite a lot of people?
I wasn't part of it, but the team that did do it, I think they wrote 40 citations in 3 hours. But I think there was 3 or 4 fellows actually, or officers involved in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Officer Rice, I got a question for you, because this is a belief that I have in my head, and it may not necessarily be true, but I'm curious, do you see more of the neighborhood speeding tickets or warnings being developed by folks who live inside the city or outside the city?
Oh, yeah. Most of those smaller, what I call the smaller areas, not the main arterials, that's usually local people. People from Oregon City that are crossing through for some reason. Getting from one major road to another major road.
And then...
because the people from out of town, they're going to stay on Washington 7th and Molalla as an example, rather than cut up Washington 5th to Lynn.
Right.
Usually that's not usually the pattern that I've seen.
So the other thing that I have a belief in, that I could be wrong, is, but we seem to notice parents carrying children to school in a rush are kind of routine. So during the peak hours of dropping kids off and picking kids up, I notice that it's more often the parents getting to the school to drop their kids off than anybody else. So I don't know if there's a trend there that you've noticed. I'm sure that's not a statistic.
I couldn't answer scientifically, but usually right in the school zone, people are really rather well behaved, especially if there's traffic. People, all in context, the time of day and so on. People are very well behaved in the school zones during the times that kids are usually, especially when in the morning, afternoon also, but it doesn't seem as obvious.
Yeah, I think it's more like a Partlow right here, approaching a school zone.
Yeah, that would be a good one to. Although I have patrolled there during those times, and I haven't written any citations for speeding there. It's a good example is the high school. I worked the high school during what you might consider to be peak times, and I don't issue citations to hardly any of the students. Not right there, If I want to issue a student a citation, I'll go halfway down the bypass and park with the laser, and that's usually why I get the 17, 16, 17, 18-year-olds there. So it's all, the focus is so much on the school zone that you're not going to get violators there very often. But approaching and departing, yeah.
I see school buses speeding through school zones, so.
Yeah, no, people don't want to do that. It's
Up here in Jackson, they're
yeah.
flying through there.
Yeah. Well, and then, things are somewhat relative too, I mean, I'm not going to issue a citation to somebody going 21 miles an hour either,
Yeah, but they're doing 25 and 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think we're in crisis mode in Oregon City with regard to neighborhood speeding, or do you see it pretty? I mean, I know you're a state highway patrol, so I don't know how many other cities you've been written in, but you see.
Oh yeah, well, I spent a lot of time in Oregon City, lots of time in Canby, Milwaukee, Gladstone, and I would, again, I only see it, while I'm here, so that's a day shift, and I wouldn't think so. Otherwise, I'd spend more time in specific areas like that. I spend time in the neighborhoods and the school zones, so people know that we're there. I'll do everything I can to make a stop for any reason, any lawful reason, just again to fly the flag. But I actually don't do a lot of enforcement action in those spots.
I think flying the flag is a pretty important part of it. Make the people aware of
It
it.
seems pretty effective. It has a lot of other peripheral benefits. If you have a burglary problem in a neighborhood, you stop any flickering light or any dirty lights on. You start doing traffic, because bad guys go everywhere in cars. And so if you do traffic enforcement, you're going to find the bad guys.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, thanks for coming.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you.
You betcha. Thank you.
Good information.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate your cooperation. So the next agenda item for you is
Myers Road. Myers Road Extension Corridor Plan.
Yep. So I'm going to share a truncated version of the PowerPoint that we had presented to City Commission and Planning Commission. So this is coming for a first hearing tomorrow evening at the City Commission meeting. We brought you guys some information a few months ago prior to the break in regards to the Myers Road Concept Extension Plan. The project was basically reaching out to all the neighbors and taking a look at the transportation system plan and revising the transportation system plan to account for the Myers Road extension coming from High School Lane and then connecting to 213 and Myers Road over there by the Hagen Shopping Center. So this is a general outline of the various plans that were put together that kind of all spoke to this topic. So we use those as our beginning concepts in trying to figure out how to make that connectivity. They all called for it, but they all called for it in various different formats. What we decided to do is convened a group of stakeholders, which consisted of the city, the community college, the high school. We reached out to the adjacent property owners, Planning Commission, and ODOT were also parts of the project management team. So these are the different configurations of how each of the plans kind of spoke to how Myers Road was supposed to be configured. None of them really accounted for the school bus barn over here in the corner, which we had to take into account for our revision to the transportation system plan. This is the general overview of the project area. The areas that you see in green are also part of the city's new economic incentive zone. So we took that into consideration because anything that we propose, we want to be consistent with supporting the economic incentive plans that are put in place for those areas. So as I said earlier, we did reach out to numerous parties. The group on the left was actually part of our stakeholder meetings. And then we also met out with Planning Commission, NRC, TriMet, property owners, Gaffney Lane Neighborhood Association, Caulfield Neighborhood Association. I think everything short of the American Red Cross. So we did cast a pretty wide net on that one. This is the bus barn facility. It kind of set the starting point for the project. We had to take into consideration that they were in the land use process and kind of work with them, so that whatever we came up with was something that they could implement and be consistent with the plan. and then also it'll affect the park's master plan for the Glen Oak Park that is on their master plan. So this alignment that you see here is the preferred alignment that was derived from meeting with the property owners and the project management team. It's a hybrid of the 3 primary alternatives that we had initially presented. The 5 intersections, as you see noted there, are all going to have some minor modifications. The intersection number 1, which is the existing entrance for the community college, the modifications there will be minor in comparison to all of the others. I'm not going to go into too much detail into each of the intersections. John Replinger will be at the City Commission meeting tomorrow, and he'll speak specifically to each of these. The ones I do want to note is number 2 calls for an additional right-hand turn lane on 213 as well as a dedicated through lane. So that's an improvement that everybody I think would agree is warranted and welcome. Intersection 4 will be the connector road into the community college, and that will be a T intersection with a stop sign on the connector. Intersection 5, the big green line that you see coming in from the right-hand side, that is the new proposed alignment for Loader Road. One of the things we were able to negotiate with the school is dedicated right-of-way for Loader Road, which has always been, it's called for, but it's never been defined clearly. So now we actually have some right-of-way that's allocated for it, which was a big gain for the project. And then intersection 3, this is my hope is that anything that we can do here can lead to some signalization improvements here at Glen Oak Road, because this is the single greatest phone call that I get on a weekly basis in the entire city. I think Lisa agrees. Yeah. So these are just some of the conclusions that I just kind of went over. I'm trying to save us a little time. So please, I hope you don't feel I'm rushing through this, but I want to make sure that we've got time for the topics. So that was a synopsis of everything that I just kind of went over. So some of the major considerations for this project was safety. So we designed the road for the target audience, with the target audience being a 16-year-old that just got their driver's license over summer driver's ed course. Also for the bus barn and the community college. So with that in mind, we decided with a 3-lane configuration. So there'll be 12-foot travel lanes in each direction, a dedicated vegetated median with turn pockets inserted in there. I'll go through the typical section here in just a second and give you a better outlook on that. The design speed was 30 miles an hour for the road classification that it's designed for. We felt 30 was a good, safe number to go with, and also gives us a little buffer for the kids coming through there. Previously, the TSPs called for a roundabout. We felt, and the traffic analysis supported it, the roundabout wasn't necessary. It was an expense that the 4-way intersection that is proposed for Loader Road, it sustains traffic to a level of service through 2035. So it'll make it through my career and John's career, which I think are primary concerns. So this is the grand scheme here. The alignment, as I said earlier, is kind of a hybridization of a few others. The road, the typical section, I'll go through that in just a second. There was a comment that came from this meeting about trying to break out the bike lane from the travel, or from the road section. We did consider that. We had a very lengthy discussion with it. It wasn't supported through the various groups. What we did like, and we thought would be prudent, is this purple dotted line that you see over here. This is a dedicated multimodal trail, offset, separated by the separated from the road. So for this section, we did try and carry through with that theme, but the consensus of the project management team was to keep the dedicated 6-foot bike lane going through the section and then continuing on to High School Lane. But they did really like it at this location because it already fits in with an existing trail system that the community college has, and it ties into that. So this is the typical section. It is modified from the original proposal. The typical section, so this is if you're standing at 213 and looking out towards Mountain Hood, so you're facing towards the east. It's a 6-foot sidewalk, which is wider than what we had initially proposed. It was 5 feet. A 10-foot planter strip. The planter strip is vegetated and will have street trees periodically through the system. They'll have to be trees that can survive in the new water quality requirements, so they're going to be slightly smaller than some of the street trees that you see in other boulevard projects. There's a 6-foot bike lane, a 2-foot buffer strip. Originally it was a 3-foot buffer strip. It's the first deployment of that in the city. We're excited about it. And the Planning Commission had called for that to be striped and possibly using, I'm going to get this wrong, methyl methacetate rather than thermoplastic striping. And we can give you guys more information on that. 12-foot travel lane, 12-foot center median, obviously vegetated with, I don't know if those are spruces or sequoias, but that's a big tree. Another 12-foot travel lane, 2-foot buffer, 6-foot bike lane, a 7-foot parking strip on the south side. This was to encourage individuals to park along the road and get kids safely to the park, and still be cognizant of the ask of amount of right-of-way from the property owners. So we were able to deduct a little bit and still meet the intent of providing some on-street parking. Also gave us a second level of safety because the bus barn's on this side, and we didn't want the bus barn kind of traveling through parking lanes and kids trying to, or traveling across parking lanes and kids trying to get to the park. 10-foot planter strip, a 6-foot sidewalk, and that is the typical. So these are the modifications to the transportation system plan. Each of these will be modified slightly. I mentioned earlier one of them is regarding a roundabout at Loder Road. I won't go through each of these in detail. They are in the final report if you'd like to go through them in a little more detail. So the last thing I want to share with you is what's it going to cost? So who's got the over-under? Anyone want to take a shot?
How many linear feet?
4.5 million.
I'm sorry?
4.5 million.
You read the report.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
How many linear feet?
How many linear feet? You know, you would think I'd know that off the top of my head. It is just shy of half a mile.
Times $700 a linear foot.
So what's your number?
600 times 700. What's that?
Come on, Sedimir, you're an engineer. Pop it out right in your head.
Okay.
So total cost, if we fund this on our own, is about $4.5 million. I'm trying to get to the right spreadsheet for you. $4.117 million. So, Mr. Johnson, you take the prize.
I was a public employee, so
Yeah.
I know what.
The kicker is if we try and get federal dollars and use some of their dollars, the price actually goes up.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have to contribute the whole $4 million theoretically, but the overall project cost does increase because of federal requirements for transportation projects.
It'll probably still be $4 million out of our pocket.
Maybe. So it's 5 to 10 years down the road. It is a project. I can tell you the groups that we have spoken to, almost universally, we have gotten unanimous support for the project. The big thing, and this is why I like the project so much, is it takes pressure off of Glen Oak, which is one of our more troublesome street sections in the entire city. This gives us a better alternative for providing access to the school and for the community college.
You're saying a decade at least?
5 to 10 years.
Yeah, it kind of depends, really, on whether it's successful getting funding for it. The community college is interested in seeing it happen sooner. Obviously, the school district, community, I think the neighborhood is really wanting to see this happen so that they don't see as much bus traffic on Glen Oak. So
perhaps you could tell us what land acquisitions might amount to and whether or not property owners who would be developing their play SDCs in advance, or how is all that going to fit together so you can time it?
So that's phase 2. And we've actually had some preliminary discussions about trying to reach out with the property owners. We met with every one of them individually, got their input on the alignments, and trying to address their concerns so that they were heard. So when we have to come to them and ask for right-of-way dedication, no one feels like they were left out of the discussion. In terms of land acquisition costs, we have not fully calculated that. We have expressed to them that one of the numbers that we're going to provide to them at phase 2 is taking a look at total project cost and then cost per linear foot of total project and calculating that for amount of frontage that each of them potentially would be getting. There is an economic value to that that can be calculated for the rest of their property, their acreage. So the hope is that we can express to them that this project is an economic incentive for your own property. The marketability for those properties is going to drastically increase. They'll recognize this, and that hopefully we can move to land acquisition as a trade or an in-kind, and we don't have to actually buy the land. It's dedicated for the right-of-way in lieu of them having to pay for the road themselves. If any one of them came in through the land use process and said, this is what we want to do, and they tried to go at it their own and go, great, here's the TSP, here's what needs to be constructed out there, and they'd have to go at it on their own. We'd like to go at it as a collaborative project with the property owners, ourselves, ODOT, and the community college. The cost analysis that we've done for this is a breakout for each one of those scenarios. So you see Myers Road, Oregon 213, Clackamas Community College. We've accounted for each of the costs for each of the partners. So if anybody decides to go on it on their own, we can tell them this is what you're going to have to cover for each of these respective sections. Anything else?
So those developments then basically get SDC credits?
Depends. If we build it, they wouldn't get credits.
No, if they build it, then they would get SDC credits.
They
right?
would get some SDC credits. Not the full cost, because they'd still be required to build a street section, but probably not an arterial street section.
The other thing that the project accounts for in here, just in the costing, not in the formal layout, is the expansion of the water transmission system and the sanitary collection system, which would have to be brought through here and connected into our system with the project.
If you talk to them about their own little special district where they could take their share of the cost of the road, say the city's paying for the arterial portion, they'd pay for what would be the neighborhood residential portion of the road, and their cost could be put in form of a 10-year assessment to pay it off as they develop their property. That way they don't have to front end the money. I know those special districts are out of favor with Oregon cities since the 80s crash, but that might work here.
Yeah, John, you're always in one step ahead of us, because I think you're right. That's a mechanism that has a lot of it's applicable in this particular case. But we haven't really gone to that next level of we're trying to get a plan adopted first,
right.
And then the next step is I want to make sure, because we don't know if we're going to try to acquire federal funds, we want to make sure when we go to right-of-way acquisition, we're following the federal guidelines for right-of-way acquisition, so that we don't trip up over improperly, acquired right-of-ways. The good news is the community college, we got to get across. I think there's four different property owners, community college, and 3 smaller property owners. So it seems like a good, a manageable group to get property acquisition from.
Are you confident that the sewer lines that you're planning for there will not end up like our sewer moratorium position has, where at either end it's too small? Are we in good shape there?
I think we're in good shape there. Yeah,
we should be. And one thing I want to clarify, because you brought up residential, these are all currently zoned for campus industrial.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
But
and
either way.
the hope is that the property owners recognize both the economic incentives that are in place there for capital construction, and they utilize that to try and bring living wage jobs into this. The entire intent of this road, and we designed it specifically to support campus industrial.
Plus you have enterprise zone, is that right? Designation?
That's the economic incentive zone. Yeah.
Right, so.
Seems like a no-brainer, doesn't it?
Seems like they could throw an oar in the water and help you get this done.
Mm-hmm. And I can say there's a couple of them that have indicated that, monetarily they'd be, I'm not going to say who, but they'd be interested in getting this moving forward.
Well, I want to say that after 30 years, it's nice to see we finally got to this point, because this is the closest we've ever been.
So, Chair, it's 8 o'clock. You want to move on, or what do you? How do you want to proceed?
We don't.
It's just
the
double
rest
our
of this
pay.
won't take too long, will it?
I don't think it will,
Okay.
especially if we cut the project piece a little short.
We'll get paid time and a half.
Yeah, 3 times our normal wage from Tom.
That's right.
So the next action is Public Works report.
You can go fast.
Hmm?
You can go fast on that.
Oh, he did? Okay.
He should.
I know that.
There's a lot going on. But.
Yeah.
All
Did
right.
you have anything on the Public Works report?
Yeah,
John?
let me go through this real quick. So we've got some term expirations coming up at the end of the year. We just wanted to make sure you guys were all thinking about those and letting us know if you're. We've got 3 folks that are interested, or so Henry, your term expires at the end of the year. Bob Mahoney and Scott Felmixger. So,
I'm interested in staying on.
Yeah, that's. So I think at some point we need that in writing, an email.
Okay.
And so keep that in mind. And I think maybe the chair and vice chair might want to talk to the other candidates and figure out if they're still interested and how we want to pursue with that. The other thing that we wanted to mention, we want to bring up, so over the summer with your chair and a couple other staff folks, we've been trying to put together what we're calling Drive Safe Oregon City. And I know it's 8 o'clock, but we're really excited about this program. So try to develop some of that. So we're going to bring up what we have is essentially a letterhead. Do we have the letterhead? Yeah. So the logo for the program. So we've been there's several Lisa and myself and Dana Webb, who's one of our new engineers that we recently hired from the city of Tualatin. She's kind of been helping us as well. They also have had a little program of their own in the city of Tualatin. But one of the key folks that we've been working with is Officer Brian Willard, and he's pretty passionate about this topic of neighborhood speeding and distracted driving. So he did all the artwork on this for us. We talked a lot about some different ideas that he came up with. Why are we not going to the? I'd rather stay on the
logo.
Logo, yeah. So we talked about slogans and things that might work. This could be used for any kind of letterhead or any kind of signage that we put up, as pretty much our branding. But we like the term protecting our roads, preserving our future. And we thought the little OC with the steering wheel and the skip line on the roadway kind of represented the topic that we're talking about. We'd be using this for our website. In fact, Lisa's already created some content on the website, so we'll show you a little bit more of that here as we move forward with this. But the other thing, we just, one of our more recent meetings was with B&B Leasing and talking to them about some utilization of some message signing that might actually be placed on the garbage cans themselves. And yeah, that'd be good. So so he came up with some of these ideas, some of which he's found via his own research and created his own artwork to represent it. Some of the text looks a little blurred, like the printing press was flawed. That was by design. So he's not necessarily set on that. I think he's got 6 designs. He had some technical difficulty, but so we had 3 of those that he came up with. I know he's working on 3 more. So the idea would be to create these graphics that would essentially be available on at least an 8.5 by 11 size sticker that could then be placed on a garbage can as a reminder. They wouldn't be a sign necessarily, so they wouldn't be meaning. I mean, we wouldn't have to worry about our sign code.
I like that when it was upside down, it really forced you to think about it.
Is that right? Yeah. Well, I guess it's up to the person placing the sticker on whether or not they want it upside down, right side up, or not.
Could we get that Fresno lens like they have at the elevator and have 2 or 3 of them so they kind of flash as you go by?
Well, you have a yard debris bin, you have a recycle bin, and you have a garbage can. So, we're yet to determine how many of these we're going to make or how we're going to distribute them. I mean, really, this is up to you folks. We're trying to provide some ideas, and we're interested in feedback. I'm kind of distracted here watching all these things Lisa's got going here, but she's moving along. These programs traditionally are most effective when they're community driven, and I think we saw some of that tonight. It's it's kind of unfortunate to me that maybe the feeling is that the city isn't interested in managing speed. I think you've heard a lot contrary to that. We think this program here in particular is targeted pretty closely on speeding. Obviously, distracted driving is actually the real dangerous problem. Speeding has, we see signs of it someplace, but as we heard tonight, it's more of a perception than it is a true problem. But reminders help a bunch. Those speed signs are effective for a reason. They tell people and they remind folks. So if you have a weekly reminder as you drive through your neighborhood with your neighbors' garbage cans with messaging on them, the thinking would be is that, well, that might remind people that, oh yeah, we need to drive safer in our neighborhoods. We need to stay off of our cell phones or whatever the distraction is. So we think that there's some potential here. We've yet to launch it, really. These are up for discussion about whether or not you think we're headed in the right direction. Is there different messaging? Again, we only have the 3. We're going to work with Officer Brian Willard to get the other 3 to you. How you want to proceed with rolling them out or getting them adopted, we're very flexible there. Do we want to float them out to the neighbors, through some of the work that Bob's been working on to get buy-in? I mean, the reality of it is B&B Leasing has been on this particular initiative, placing signage on their trash cans or recycled cans. They're sounding pretty receptive of that idea. That's one way. How do we distribute those? Do we distribute them through the school kids? Do we, we've got lots of options there, and it's nice to have the Transportation Advisory Committee kind of sponsoring this initiative, if possible. So we're definitely open to feedback.
Can some of these be printed on a number 10 envelope size and just stuffed as a flyer in the utility bill?
I suspect because of just a straight up messaging, no sticker.
No sticker, just a straight up logo.
I don't see why not. We're talking 8.5. We can get them in any format. Once the artwork's done, it comes in any size we want. So
I'm just thinking, just the size of the envelope. So when you pull it out, you don't have to unfold it or anything. You just see it.
Pretty small though, right?
Well, yeah, but if you look at these logos, that's approximately the proportion of some of them, and it would just.
How large is that one on the screen right there on that garbage can?
Yeah, it may be a little bit bigger than 8.5 by 11. I think it's more like 11 by 17.
11 by 17.
But on that side, will it last?
Yeah, if you just print it out at home, what we're proposing is some sort of laminated sticker.
Right.
Weather resistant.
Yeah, but the machine, when they bite it and throw it,
Yeah, there is that wear and tear. We talked to B&B Leasing. They thought that depending on their can design, this isn't one of their cans, by the way. This is just an example. But on their can, they thought higher up on the can was a better solution for that because the arms would pinch that.
That is where it grabs.
And it could be oriented horizontally instead of vertically if necessary.
Yeah, look, based on their cans, I think that there's opportunity for both. So we're still working on that piece. I guess that's a detail that we would think that you would want the staff to figure out. It's more just like, are we headed in the right direction? You know, we don't want to take too big a bite at this apple. There's obviously other messaging. Other agencies have over the years have taken on, you know, other messages besides distracted driving and speeding. You know, there's lots of opportunity for that. What we pretty much heard from this group was we wanted to stick to speeding and distracted driving. We wanted to focus a little bit more on messaging that kids might focus a little bit more on kids. So, you know, soccer ball on a sign, you know, that's not likely to be many adults out on the road doing that. But, you know, that kind of messaging, that keep it simple. So, again, I think that we're not asking you for a decision. We just really wanted to give you an update. I appreciate Bob being at all our meetings when we talk about this. I don't know if, Bob, you wanted to say something in response to
Only
this?
that I'm really excited about it. You know, I think we can accomplish a lot in the city by getting the message out and showing concern, but I'm also very interested in the grassroots part of it. We're talking with the neighborhood associations and the PTAs, some of the service clubs, those sort of areas.
Hey, John, is there any data regarding places that might have implemented this outreach? They have noticed the decrease in speeding or traffic accidents?
Data I haven't seen, but we've seen a lot of testimonials through websites with folks that have these that indicate that they're working, but no data.
There was no study done by anybody.
Not that I remember coming across. No.
I have some information about some people in the county that may be able to help us. You've worked with Joe Merrick, a traffic engineer. Okay. And,
he's been here. If you remember, Bob, he presented on the county's zero. Remember what it was called?
I don't remember what the
Drive
name.
Drive to
that
Zero
now.
or something
Okay,
like that.
yeah.
So that's their countywide,
Yeah.
safety campaign as well.
Right. We might do some coordinating with them even.
Right. The
If
messaging.
maybe we could get some money from them. Huh? Money?
Wow, wouldn't that might?
You think they have money?
Well, I have I guess maybe an idea. I don't know but what about maybe seeking a grant to do a study, like before rolling out something like this, and then after we roll out this and do kind of some data analysis? Maybe there are grants out there where they can cover some of that. It'll be interesting to see, does this really, how successful this is.
I think you've talked to the waste hauler, correct?
That's correct.
And they might, for a little byline, sponsor this. They mail out the monthly bill. If for some reason at one time we could finance 11 by 17 envelope that the bill's in, then it would go to every home. You just have the cost of the postage. You're going to get a lot better coverage that way than trying to go through the neighborhood association. You can do both, but I think that gets it to everybody. Maybe the neighborhood association can be talking about it and pilot it in one neighborhood, and then you can maybe analyze it. You find out if it had some success there. Then you probably get a sponsor or a couple sponsors for the second iteration of that.
Like I said, John, you're always one step ahead of us. The B&B leasing or Oregon City Garbage, depending on what you think of, they when we talked to them, they sounded like they would be interested in being sponsors of either printing or those kind of things. So they're thinking along the same lines as well, as kind of helping sponsor this program because they think it is of value to the community.
Depending on what kind of website you're ultimately going to have, maybe you want to put a website number on most of these stickers so people could note that, and then they'll know where to go look at it. And if you start having some success, you can toot your own horn there, and that people can read about it.
Yeah, great idea.
Is this something that would also roll into the Oregon City a magazine or that OC News?
Yeah, eventually we'd want to take it out in a full-blown campaign. We're, at this point, just trying to get started with content that you folks could buy into and say, bless it, so that we could move forward with it.
You got a motion, or what are you looking for?
Well, we'd hope to have all the ideas for you. I think it's just an introduction to share it. I think we'll bring it back again when we have more details about what B&B Leasing or Oregon City Garbage, is willing to, how they're willing to work with us with a little more certainty, and then we'll have the artwork as well. And maybe take a look at the website that we have today. There's some links on there. We're willing to add additional links as well.
What about the signage? Are you going to be, in addition to maybe putting on the garbage cans, like have additional signs installed throughout the community with this messaging?
Well, that again, once we have the artwork, that's an option. We were focused pretty closely on the garbage cans, but and we need to be a little bit careful. I mean, we're about to adopt a sign ordinance, so I want to, these were perceived. We ran this idea by the city planning department, who's working on the sign ordinance. They thought that because these were movable and essentially on a can like that they wouldn't be, like, for instance, are you talking more like a soccer sign where it says soccer?
No, these are permanent. Like you have your speed signs. Those type of signs.
Okay, yeah.
So like a rider underneath the speed sign or something.
Yeah, I mean that would be maybe that's a great idea. Maybe putting it underneath, speed limit signs.
Or like a neighborhood watch sign where you just
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we a few years ago, I don't know, some of our signal controllers at intersections had some safety messaging that, again, Joe Merrick and the county kind of came up with and tried out. So that's another good location for that kind of a messaging. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities. So once we have the graphics and the buy-in on those messages, we'll move forward with lots of different
on
those kind of suggestions.
On our like city streets, not including like Highway 213 and 99, how many accidents a year do you get, especially our serious accidents?
Oh, there's a question I don't know the answer to off the top of my head. We did Martin actually put together a bunch of accident data for specific intersection. We're going to run out of time, Martin. But we've shared that with you before.
I was just curious. It would be, if we have that data, and then if we implement this message, we kind of have some sort of a base.
You're thinking, yeah, that's a great idea. We do have that accident data,
and see as we push this message out to people, and
we've got
see
mapped our 25 most prominent traffic areas, mapped and from speed or accident reports indicating the type of incident and the general conditions, all of that. So that's all mapped, and that would be very good for targeting some areas for if we're going to do these rider signs or something else. Unfortunately, for that might be better deployment with those because most of those intersections aren't residential, so no one's going to get a garbage can out in those.
Yeah. But at least we have the basis. Maybe if we're pushing this out to community,
then
we can go look year after year to see if we're actually getting the benefit of this effort.
Okay, I think that's it. We cover that pretty well.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll bring back more. I just want to hand out. Last time we mentioned. Letter. Actually, let me have a copy of that. There. Thanks. So, actually, tomorrow, there's a TriMet board meeting that really is about adoption of a 1/10 of 1% employment tax increase for TriMet. And TriMet's made a lot of service changes in Oregon City, and they're going to make even more as the Orange Line comes on. In fact, I think they've implemented all those changes as the Orange Line comes on. So it's really just an acknowledgement letter that we're as a city appreciative of their changes to their bus schedules that reflect not necessarily more routes through Oregon City, but increase in routes and increases in trips up to the community college, up to the Park Place neighborhood, and then some of the route changes that take you as a bus rider. You can ride from Oregon City down to the new Orange Max line, and you could either stay on that bus and continue into Portland, or there may be a different bus that takes you out to the Clackamas Town Center. And so just acknowledging some of the good work that they've been doing and supporting their payroll tax increase, which is relatively small. So I wanted to share that with you because I think we talked about that before the summer break. So it's pretty late. Other than acknowledging that we've got a lot of construction traffic and construction going on around town, I would say our projects are moving forward okay. We've had a couple of instances of performance problems with our contractors, but we're working through those issues. But a lot of work underway right now. A lot of the work is managed out of the street division, and they're doing a great job with that. So our slurry seal work is done. Our annual paving contractor is well underway. We've just finished this little project, this little utility project out in front of City Hall here, and the plan is to come back with the same contractor that does all of our annual paving and mill off a couple inches of asphalt here and pave that back. So that'll be new. Not that this group necessarily follows us too much, but the moratorium projects have been moving forward. We've got a pretty big project up near the hospital for upsizing several pipelines that were undersized for the moratorium project. So those are that's going to keep us busy through at least a small portion of the winter, and then we're moving forward with more design work on all of next year's projects as well. So I think good things are happening.
John, because of that school bus accident yesterday up on McLaughlin, it brought to mind a question that I've had before, which is how many of our traffic signals allow left turn signal at the same time you have a ped crossing? Okay. Because that seems to be the primary cause of that particular accident.
Was that in Oregon City?
That was in Gladstone up by the Burger King.
Okay.
Glen Echo.
We've got
on Glen Echo.
One of the things that the county has asked us to do is to upgrade. We've got a lot of older signal controllers. There's really an old version and a new version, and there's not signal technology doesn't change much. So
no, they still use Z80s.
Yeah, they use some, but it's effective technology, and the state approves every single
board.
computer that goes in those signal cabinets. And so the county has asked us, because of a lot of our outdated controllers, they're not going to support those anymore. So they've asked us to upgrade those. And Martin's working on a project to upgrade, I think, 13 signals in Oregon City, signal controllers in Oregon City. Now, those are much more likely to prohibit that when the pedestrian button is activated, so that you wouldn't get that right turn allowable. If there's a right turn arrow,
right?
If it's a through arrow and you can make the right turn, I don't know what the situation was in Gladstone. But
it was a left turn arrow.
It was a left turn arrow. So
they were turning onto McLaughlin, and
so it was a permissive yellow.
And no, it was. I don't think so. I think it was an arrow per se, a green arrow, and at the same time the ped crossing was lit for crossing.
Oh, okay. So.
And I know there used to be one of those at Beaver Creek and Warner Milne, because I almost got hit there a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, these new controllers have much more capability of preventing that kind of accident. So at that point in time, that will be all of our signal controllers will be upgraded, except for I think the south end pedestrian signal, which doesn't really need that level of, of complexity
Right.
to it. So it's a pretty big project. I think we hadn't planned on that. They didn't ask us to do that when we budgeted for that. So we're utilizing some of our operations funds for signal maintenance.
I imagine that's like 25 grand a signal. Or
Oh, no.
No.
No. It's not anywhere near there. It's more like $3,000 a signal, but
still.
It's still.
So that's
you know,
one truck you can't buy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
Different pot of money.
Yeah, we're going to pay for it out of our signal budget, but it's a bigger ask, and some of the other signal interconnectivity and programming that we had planned won't happen as a result of this. We'll focus instead on the controllers, which is okay.
Yeah. You need to upgrade the controllers so before you can interconnect them anyway.
Right. So with that, I'm going to end the Public Works report unless you got something else you wanted to ask us.
Future agenda items? Do you have anything? Anybody have anything on?
I'll recount my request for executive review of the upcoming budget.
Yeah, I do think I remember you. I know I remember you asking that. It's just not listed on our.
Listed on future agenda items, so we wouldn't lose track of it.
Yeah.
Along with the Newell Creek Canyon request you had made,
Right.
they'll be
there it
coming
is.
next meeting.
Right.
So yeah, that way we don't lose track
Yeah.
of anything.
The other one that I know is coming, I heard from Tony that they want to do the Beaver Creek, they're working to readopt the Beaver Creek concept plan. So they'd like to bring that to the Transportation Advisory Committee. So I think that's coming. And, yeah, I'm not sure if have we actually confirmed with the hospital?
We haven't. We've confirmed with Metro, though, next month for the Newell Creek Canyon presentation.
Okay.
I heard through the grapevine that the hospital did a revised presentation to the combined neighborhood committees.
I know they were at the McLaughlin neighborhood meeting not too long ago. I didn't
Yeah.
see them at the CIC, but they could have. I can't keep track of my own meetings, let alone theirs.
I did go to interval one. I did go to one on June 30, and basically they are still in the process of trying to move forward and get their act together, as it were.
Well, nobody likes fees, but I think that we're proving that our pavement maintenance fees are workable, and you guys are doing a wonderful job with that money. I read this article in last Sunday's Oregonian about Portland must address funding for street repairs now. I don't think that city is ever going to get caught up with
They
repairs
can't.
on their streets. And
People don't understand where the money comes from.
yeah, right. Yeah, so that's you guys are doing a great job, in my opinion. And does anybody have anything they want to talk about? Okay, this meeting is adjourned.